Yu-Gi-Oh should be less interactive. This is a Reddit vibes-based opinion, right? Here we go.
Okay. Let me start. I'm going to activate Forbidden Droplet. Let me send a spell, trap, and monster for cost. And response. Oh, right. right.
You could respond with
Sorry.
the binder.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay, and then on a new chain, I think I'm going to activate Super Poly. Response?
This is a 6-card combo, by the way. That's your hand is gone.
Welcome to One Bad Take, the series where we take an immensely unpopular opinion about Yu-Gi-Oh, one considered completely indefensible, and attempt to defend it to our dying breath.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So basically, every single Farfa discussion video. This should be good. Okay, well, I guess it doesn't really work if you don't agree with it. But let's entertain this thought experiment. Why should Yu-Gi-Oh be less interactive? Big think.
Should we unlimit Shifter? Should we design every deck to zone lock like Kashtira? Is stun the best way to play Yu-Gi-Oh? Let's decide together. This is One Bad Take.
All it takes is one bad day. Yu-Gi-Oh needs more uninteractable cards.
Cat here.
Oh, wait, okay. More uninteractable cards in Yu-Gi-Oh rather than Yu-Gi-Oh in general being less I guess that's a whole different angle. I don't know. I feel like the only way to make like good go second cards is to just straight up throw a unreactable clause into them, right? Forbidden Droplet, Super Poly, Red Reboot is sort of uninteractable for the most part, right? So the only one of those is, no, two of those I guess have been hit in some capacity. Huh. All right. Well, let him cook.
And welcome back to another episode. Today we're expressing another opinion in Yu-Gi-Oh that I'm sure everyone will agree with. And that opinion, I think, is pretty simple. More cards in Yu-Gi-Oh should be unable to be responded to. This is a specifically relevant topic now, given that in Master Duel, we're in the middle of Cool Tune format, and super polymerization is everywhere. It's gotten me thinking that unrespondability is actually amazing for a card game like Yu-Gi-Oh! A game that normally emphasizes interactivity through hand traps and other interruptions.
Unresponsiveness?
So, what do I mean by unrespondable? Let's talk about it before we get into the arguments, because I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Has different levels of unrespondable, and I think that in itself is actually really interesting. At the highest level, you have cards like Super Polymerization, which happen at quick effect speed and have a clause that says, this card cannot be responded to. Then, one level below that, you have cards like Forbidden Droplet, which happen at quick effect speed and are sometimes unrespondable. If a player sends a monster card, a spell card, and a trap card as cost for the effective Droplet, for example, it's effectively as unrespondable as Super Poly. A level below Droplet, you have a card like Dark Ruler No More, which says that neither player can activate monster effects in response to its activation. And, of course, we should also mention in this discussion counter traps, which happen at a speed that only other counter traps can respond to. While not technically unrespondable, they can be in many circumstances. Now, these varying levels have a lot of texture and nuance to any argument about unrespondability in Yu-Gi-Oh! But for the purposes of this video, I think the highest of the highest level, the Super Poly unrespondable, is exactly what this game needs more of. Now, I know what you're thinking. But guess what? Even this argument is unrespondable. That's right. Comments are turned off for this one. Even this video is unable to be...
Oh, that would have been a crazy funny bit. That legitimately would have been a really good bit if you actually just turned off comments.
...responded to. Disclaimer, I'm just kidding. Please go like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on Twitch. I want to hear all of your opinions. Thank you very much.
The board I see in my nightmares.
Picture this.
Do you guys want to see the board I see in my nightmares? What am I doing on Twitter, man?
Sit down to play your favorite game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and you lose the first coin of the day. Not to worry, you open a great hand. 1 starter, 3 extenders, and a maxi. You activate your maxi and draw, it gets negated by your opponent's
One could say that's a charter and 4
But it still might be okay.
crabs.
Your hand is strong, surely everything will be fine. Unfortunately, your opponent is on a combo heavy deck, and they combo off for, no joke, 37 minutes, leaving an end board with 3 Omni Negates, an Ashuria Beast to negate every spell, and 2 pops. You were waiting for your draw to see if it might save you, but that Raigeki off the top is just going to get negated. You play it out until everything in your hand ate a negate, scoop while your opponent still has 4 interactions left, cry a little, and head to the next game. Was that fun? We talk in a lot of videos about the unbreakable board problem, but here's a solution I hear almost no one say. Just make more starters unrespondable. People talk about how amazing Draco Telketu is as a going second card, and its design is really good in that it's more advantageous going second than going first. But ultimately, it succumbs to the same problem 99% of all cards succumb to. It folds to a negate. Of course, you can argue
I love like what the approach is here, right? So it's like, okay, so unbreakable board's bad. So let's make cards that have bonus effects. But now we need them to be unnegatable as well. And the core root problem is never addressed. We just keep adding band-aids on top of band-aids until we zombify the game into a mummy. So what we need to do here is add the Dragoton monster from your deck to your hand. If your opponent controls a monster, you can perform a fusion. So what they should have done on Ketu is add another clause that says, and if your opponent controls another monster, they cannot respond. Thoughts? You want to take part in this thought experiment? What do you think? Like bonus clauses. What do you think?
That a card good enough to force out a negate is already doing its job. But I would argue that to be effective going second, a card cannot merely trade for a single negate. That is, for the most part, not good enough in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!
Genuinely true.
Now, imagine a world where Ketu is unrespondable if you're going second. Is the game in a healthier or less healthy position? I would argue healthier. Think of the Nightmare board, the 6 Omni Negate board. Not only would a card like Ketu...
This 6 Omni Negate board, by the way, only exists in the dreams of, like, Yugi boomers, but is this really a thing? Like, what is the widest, craziest turn 1 combo you can do in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now? And it's, like, magnets, and it's like, well, where are magnets? Magnets are a tier 2 deck, the second best deck in the game. Okay, never mind. I guess it's not that rare.
Ketu being unreactable helped to dismantle that board. It would also disincentivize players from attempting to make that board in the first place.
Avoid that argument.
It would encourage a diversity of interaction. On the side of the combo player, it would encourage building a more advantageous setup with a wider array of cards in hand, in graveyard, and in back row to sort of bait out your opponent's interruptions. But ultimately, think of what Ketu does, right? It creates disruption, creates advantage, and establishes board presence. These are 3 things that going second players are in desperate need of, and for it to be stuffed by a negate, or even by an Ash Blossom in hand, is an aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! That I believe makes the game worse.
When my hand traps resolve.
In our little imagined scenario above, that there was one big game-determinative negate that happened before any monsters were summoned at all. That's right. It was when our Max C got Ash Blossom. Now, I'm going to say something here. Look at me.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I know where this is going. Don't do it. Don't. He's gonna suggest we make Fua and Maxi unrespondable. Don't do it, please.
I'm gonna say something, and no one's gonna get mad at me. Okay? I'm gonna pitch an idea here,
okay,
and no one is going to get mad. Are we good?
Cease.
Okay.
Stop.
Are we good?
Stop.
Can we all do that? All right.
Stop.
If Maxi were unreactable, many games of Yu-Gi-Oh! Would be far more interactive, and less games would be instantly scooped to the Maxi minigame. But I also...
Oh my god, wait, what does it say?
And less games would be instantly scooped to the Maxi minigame.
I mean specifically that my Maxi got Ash that now the game is over for me, part of the minigame. Oh my god. Okay, maybe not Maxi, but do you think if Fua was unrespondable going second, do you think that would be better? Or healthier? There's only really 2 ways to interact with that card, right? Ash, call by crossout, maybe Gamma if you're insane. I don't know.
But I also don't just mean Maxi here. There is an enduring disposition in the community that hand traps should resolve, and cards like Crossout and Called by the Grave are considered some of Yu-Gi-Oh!'s least healthy card.
Can I just... The premise and idea of hand traps should resolve is referring to hand traps that aren't lingering. Like, no one is arguing Droll should resolve. Shifter should resolve. The exception to that rule is lingering card effects, not like one-to-one trades.
Because they remove hand trap's ability to do what they're supposed to do.
I am arguing that. Giga Chad. Well, take your ban.
I'm saying, if we made hand traps unreactable, at least for the going second player, then it would remove the toxicity from cards like Crossout and Called By, which would pivot to becoming niche options for mirror matches or going first cards for specifically graveyard-focused strategies. It would also guarantee that your interruptions are interruptions. Even if you are a fan of, say, dodging imperms or veilers by chaining removal to them, or responding to certain hand trap effects, there's at least an argument to be made to attach a clause to them saying...
Dude, I was playing some ranked last night, and one of those Regina chain to imperm on my Lucina play came up. Like, when you think of, like, quintessential Yu-Gi-Oh! And, like, just fun gameplay, it's not even going first. the best feeling in Yu-Gi-Oh, for me personally, that I experience is when you're going second and you're cracking a board and you pull off like a dodge on a disruption. When you like activate a card and you send it for cost to like get out of the way of like a trap or like a Veiler or something, like there is nothing more satisfying than pulling that shit off in Yu-Gi-Oh. Going second has the potential to be straight up just like the most fun way to play the game. But I just feel like it's too decided by the cards you draw, which sounds very obvious and basic at the, you know, card game simplest level. It's like, yeah, you are restricted by the cards that you draw in a card game. Crazy concept, I know, right? But going first doesn't feel like as important to draw the exact specific sequence of cards. I lost the game to Tenpai, and the only possible way he could have won is by drawing 6 specific cards, which he did. Storm, Reboot, Droplet, Sangan Summoning, Pedra, Call By. He had to draw 6 exact cards, not like, you know, general cards, like exact cards. And even then, I could have won if I used the Elf Note Trap to negate Droplet instead of negating the Called By. Because then he chained Called By, because then he chained Droplet and I couldn't Baron it. So if I did it in reverse and I Baroned first before using the Trap, I would have just won the game. Despite that 6 card combo. So, yeah. The point here is like, going first doesn't need you to draw the exact cards in the exact sequence, whereas going second kind of sort of does necessitate that type of gameplay. So as fun as going second can be and has the potential to be with situations like the one that I described, it is just really limited by exact specific cards that you have to draw. Because the end boards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Just demand specific answers, not general answers. That's kind of... And I don't know how you would approach that or fix that, but that's neither here nor there. Let's make Maxi unrespondable. Thoughts?
This card cannot be negated, which would still allow for skill expression while the cards were not immediately checked by going first staples. I'm going to use this section to be a little pedantic, so bear with me here. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, the concept of interactivity has always been a little suspect to me. Player 1 activates an effect that searches, and Player 2 chains an Ash Blossom to negate it. There was interaction there, but it was an interaction that prevented action. This leads to a very binary gameplay in many cases. X either happens or it doesn't, at the cost of a card or two. Ketu resolves or it doesn't. There either was an extender drawn or there wasn't. And I'm not saying there isn't a great deal of thought and skill put into these game states, and navigating decision-making without
Who says this?
perfect information is one of the skills Yu-Gi-Oh! Tests most. But I would argue that the most fun and enjoyable games of Yu-Gi-Oh! Are the ones where both players manage to establish some sort of board presence, ones where at least a few power cards are able to resolve, and where both players feel as though their decisions meaningfully contributed to a nuanced and complex board state.
This is all well and good and sounds great on paper, but it's very hard to actually practically define this, right? Everything he just said sounds perfect and great on paper, but how do you like meaningfully practically apply that into a game? How do you make that look?
Which means there's an argument to be made, and I'm making it now, that a little bit less interactivity on key starters and extenders could lead to more and more meaningful interactivity for both players in more games of Yu-Gi-Oh! Even solely from a perspective of feel. Doesn't it suck to stare down a full board with your best starter and extender in hand and just know it doesn't matter at all because all they do is swallow some Omni Negates or be popped before activating at all? Doesn't it suck to work through so many pieces of interaction only to get ashed on your branded fusion as the last card in their hand? Oftentimes, I find myself thinking, if only something was able to resolve, or...
I think that like so much of the going first problems are negates and not necessarily disruptions, right? Now it's hard to like explain this properly, but basically like hard negates going first are just so much less interesting and harder to deal with because they just negate, right? It's very binary. You do something and they stop it completely. Now imagine your opponent had 6 responses on the field, but none of them were negates. They had like a Book of Moon, a Pop, a Grave Banish, like different types of layers in that way, right? that could be more interesting to play through than very clearly, like, you know, Baron, Nat Beast, Counter Trap, and whatever the hell else you end on, right? So enter battle phase evenly. Well, so that's the big issue as well, because like the board breakers would become too powerful potentially, right? So if you end on a bunch of like disruption that isn't Omni negate, then you become really vulnerable to like evenly matched and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's weird because that is like a big point. But it's also strange because in some ways, like a lot of decks don't even care about that. Like, do you remember going evenly matched against Branded back in the day? Like it actually wouldn't matter. They would like just chain Branded in red. And then on the new chain, they would like trigger a guy that like brought back another guy, and then they would still end on like a Mirror Jade and like another fusion or something, like on the new, like, you know what I mean? Like, so it just depends on the deck. But you could argue if you just straight up get rid of every Omni negate for going first, you do risk of just letting cards like evenly Dark Ruler just straight up become auto wins. So it's rough. You would have had to have designed this years ago with this in mind, but too late for that, right? Although, you know, ban lists exist.
Say on the board, I would have had a way into this game. And I think that's a great place for Yu-Gi-Oh! To explore in designing future sets. Once
Evenly
again, we're going to
isn't
keep the
matched
counter
anymore.
argument section a little bit brief because I want to hear your counter arguments and your positions in the comments. But I will say there's kind of a very obvious one here, right? Is that if you don't let your opponents interact with cards, if you take away your opponent's ability to interact, you are taking them away their ability to counterplay. You are taking away their capacity to make decisions. Your opponent cannot interact meaningfully, for example, with an unknown copy of, say, Super Poly or an unreactable droplet. They simply have to let you make the decision of what you're going to do about it, right? That is a game state in which you as the player getting Super Polyed or getting dropleted have no capacity to make decisions in the moment. And while I think that that's, you know, a frustrating experience, especially in this format where Super Poly and Droplet are everywhere, I also think it's worth noting that there is counterplay to cards like Super Poly and Droplet. They just have to be prescriptive instead of reactive, right? If you suspect your opponent has a Super Polymerization or a Droplet, you can build a board that handles situations like that. In Cool Tune, for example, you can leave 3 monsters in board to swallow the Super Poly before going into your plays. You can leave 1 monster on board to stop yourself from being Super Poly.
Is the Magnet Warrior end board uninteractable with Super Poly, by the way?
And your deck has
I think it is,
trap
right?
cards and spells and monsters, you're able to chain block yourself if they decide not
There's
to
like
send
Elf,
3 cards. If
Baron,
they decide to send 3 cards, that's
Nat Beast,
3 whole cards gone from their
something
hand.
else?
Right? Currently, the
Potentially the
unreactable
Barrier
cards
statue?
are pretty well balanced around the necessary
But not all
conditions they
magnet
need
boards
to
end on
activate
statue, though.
and the setup required, and like the cost that is required to activate them. And expanding unreactable cards could create an unhealthy game state, could create a place where the game feels just like you don't get to make any decisions at all. That having been said, on the counter side of the argument, with the way things currently are, how many decisions are you making into that 6 Omni Negate board? Not to strawman the 6 Omni Negate board again and again and again. How many games
We keep bringing up
Yu-Gi-Oh!
the 6
do you
Omni,
play
and
at
like,
the moment
it is
where
like
you
a
feel
very
every
specific
decision you
playstyle
make
that isn't
matters?
normally like the standards.
And that is like an interesting question that I think this specific argument is trying to tackle. Is adding a tiny bit more uninteractability. Is adding a tiny little smidgen, a little bit more safety on your starter or extender going to make the game unfun, uninteractable, or would it help create more game states where decisions did matter from both players? Oh, who knows?
Okay.
The capacity to react to each and every card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of its greatest strengths, but also possibly one of its greatest weaknesses. The overabundance of negates and interactions can be such an overwhelming wall to overcome that a player may not feel like they've gotten to play at all, even while playing a seemingly interaction-filled game. Ultimately, I do think that interactivity is a fine line in a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! It is not automatically good to say that more interactivity is better. The quality of interaction matters more than the interactivity itself, and adding some uninteractable elements would allow for greater interactivity in more games of Yu-Gi-Oh! Be it unreactable hand traps, or unreactable starters, unreactable extenders, more unreactable board breakers, any of...
You know, this video started with like indefensible point, and I'm actually really warmed up to this now. I feel like this is maybe a good solution. Just you just put in like a couple of go second cards that just actually just can't be interacted with. And I'm not talking about like defensive generic cards. I mean like straight up engine pieces. Like legitimately like Branded Fusion says you can't negate it if you're going second. I know that's upsetting a lot of people right now, but fuck it. I don't know. Anything to make go second better. Genuinely, I'm for it. Genuinely, I'm for it.
The above, but add another
Would you
layer
pet this cat?
of decision-making and nuance to a game that is already fairly complex. And I think that would be a great thing. So yeah, I'm gonna normal summon Dormouse. No. With the new errata, it's uninteractable. Yeah. You can't. When it's
I don't know about that,
though.
though.
Yeah, no. You're not allowed to. Yeah. Dormouse activate. Banish. White Rabbit. No. White Rabbit also you can't. Your key can't interact. No. White Rabbit effect to summon, and then White Rabbit set the trap.
All right, now I'm having nightmares. Awesome.
No. You can't interact. You can't.
Very cool. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we found the new best way to design Yu-Gi-Oh going forward. Staples and certain hand traps and starters, extenders, maybe just straight up should say you can't interact with them. All right, let's go.